Herbert firing, and it is going to be caught in the end zone by the big body Mike Williams. Insanity. This is just insane.
You're going to see the double team on the far left-hand side. You had Hayward on the inside, the safety on the outside, and Herbert just threw a bullet about a foot off the ground. They time it perfectly, and nobody in Pittsburgh can believe what's happening.
All right, we are back here on the Just and Suffering podcast. You just heard NBC Sports, Al Michaels and Chris Collinsworth calling a touchdown from Justin Herbert to tie the game in regulation at overtime, one of the wildest game of the year. Joining today as we wrap up Week 18, get ready for the NFL playoffs, the host of the Sharp Cheddar podcast, Joe D'Aloisio is here. Joe, how are you?
Mike, I am doing well. As always, thanks for having me.
Not a problem. I have to say, on the NFL, now they're expanding to 18 weeks, and I was sitting there like, oh boy, like the extra game where you're diluting the product, blah, blah, blah. Sort of what happened last year, Super Wildcard Weekend, where we said, oh, we need this many games. Like, yes, we did need this many games.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly the games that mattered were really great games for the most part. And, the intro clip to this podcast, to this segment, I mean, that was probably one of the best games of the season.
Yeah.
And it's fun going into it. It's like, wow, imagine if both teams are just like, all right, we'll just kneel it out the entire way. Like what kind of publicity that still would have gotten for both those teams getting in. And then at the end where they almost tie at 32, which is like, you can't make that up.
Yeah.
The fact that it almost happened is just crazy. The NFL couldn't have asked for a better ending or a better Sunday night game to push them into the playoffs.
Oh, for sure. I said on Twitter at the time, and this is how good the game was, because usually if I am multitasking, I'll put a podcast on, I'll have the game on, I'll be working on something. The podcast went off about towards the end of the fourth quarter when they were trying to drive down and tie the game. I was like, okay, I'm locked in fully on this all the way through.
Oh, you had to be locked in because it was just constant action back and forth and back and forth. And really probably what was so exciting or most exciting from this game was the Raiders had the Chargers in so many third down opportunities, so many fourth down opportunities. And Justin Herbert just kept converting and converting and converting. And you were like, oh my God, this is going to happen. This is actually going to happen. And it was must-watch TV. And if you weren't watching it from the start, you got sucked in and started watching it because everyone was talking about it.
Yeah. Yeah, that was all the rage on Twitter. And there was a point in overtime when they were just trading these haymakers. I'm like, can they just agree to tie and both get in? Because I want to see both these teams in the playoffs have the Steelers.
Yeah, you know what? It really stinks that somebody didn't have to go home if they tied. But the fact that one of them is not in really probably hurts big time.
Yeah, it does. We'll get back to that game in a minute. I want to touch on some of the local angles first, and we'll get the quick one out of the way. Jets end the season 4-13. Does feel like the arrow's pointing up a little bit. They played well down the stretch. Zach Wilson didn't throw a pick his last 5 games, and we heard Joe Douglas yesterday say, hey, you know what, next year we have to be playing meaningful games in December. We're going to try and have more flexibility with acquisitions. I feel like the arrow is up, and next year's big for them.
Yeah, I think the arrow is definitely trending in the right direction. And the most important thing that you got late in the season was you saw good progression from Zach Wilson. And that's what you want to see in your young quarterback. You don't want to see him making the same mistakes that he was making earlier on in the season. So the fact that he got better late, that's definitely something that you're, as a Jet fan, as the Jet organization, you should be really encouraged about, despite only winning 4 games this season. But now you have a ton of draft capital. You do well here and you win this offseason and it starts in the draft. I'm not saying you're going to be much better, but again, you take another step in the right direction. And if I were them, my main focus right now is building the strongest, the biggest, and the best offensive line possible to not only protect Zach Wilson, but you may have something really nice in Michael Carter. Oh. So take advantage of that opportunity here and build that offensive line to help both of them out.
Oh, for sure. And I mean, our mutual friend of the podcast, John Descremsey's said on his podcast multiple times here. It's like with the Jets, with the way this league is, with the talent they have, all the cap space, all the picks, there is no reason that next December we cannot have them at least be on the In the Hunt graphic that's up on the broadcast late in the year. If they're not on that graphic, you have big problems.
I mean, they should be right around there. They should be right around there. I think it's kind of crazy to just say, oh, if all things work out, they could be a playoff team. Could they possibly? But I don't think they're at that step just yet. Again, it starts in the draft. Forget about free agency. It starts in the draft. Look at a guy that I actually thought would have been very productive for them, Denzel Mims. Like, he was nothing, absolutely nothing. You can't afford to have those kind of picks if you want your team to get or to be much better.
Yeah, for sure. Now let's go across town to the absolute circus that is the New York Football Giants. And Joe, did you ever think we'd see a point where the Giants were the laughingstock of town? No,
definitely not. But they certainly took that level right now with the decision to keep Joe Judge. I mean, to me, it's ludicrous. I thought multiple times in that final game, he was coaching to get fired. Some of the formations, some of the play calling decisions, he was basically like screaming like, hey, get me out of here. And they did exactly opposite of that. So that, to me is a complete shock. And let me tell you something. For any possible personnel people that are looking for that to become a GM, I don't think you take this job. I don't think you take this job unless you have control over the coaching. I don't think you take this job unless you have some sort of security, because it's not worth it.
No, it's not. And I was talking to you before the podcast started off. I'll bring some of this stuff on there now about Ralph Vacchiano's reporting for SNY on this. And I talked last night with my buddy Justin Diaz. We went deep into the circus and the last 48 hours going through yesterday, where I sent the players out to meet the media without any idea about Joe Judge's job status. And here's the update on Tuesday afternoon. As of right now, Joe Judge is still the head coach of the New York Giants. I want to read you 2 tweets from Ralph Vacchiano, came out about an hour ago. He said, the Joe Judge watch will likely go on several more days, I understand it. He'll meet again with ownership either today or tomorrow. Then the owners will likely let the GM candidates and their eventual new GM weigh in before making any decision on Judge's future. And then another tweet, this can change at any point. The Giants owners can do whatever they want as their franchise. But my understanding is that they will still make the final call on Joe Judge. The new GM will have input, and if he or she is a better option, the owners will consider it, which to me, you listen to that, Joe Judge's coming back. There's no GM that's going to come in here and get them to fire him.
It certainly sounds like it, but if I'm someone who's trying to break into that kind of a role, or that's my goal, I mean, to hitch your wagon to Joe Judge, I say, and maybe I stay where I am until the next opportunity comes.
And there are other opportunities right now. I mean, Minnesota and Chicago have GM openings, and both are more attractive than this one.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, especially, with Chicago, probably a little bit more rebuilding than Minnesota, but you do have a young quarterback that, you get the right guy and the right people around him. Maybe that's special. In Minnesota, you have a lot of talent on that offensive side of things. You got to rebuild the defense a little bit, but way more attractive than the New York Giants. That's for sure.
Yeah, putting aside the Joe Judge thing, if you and I were a GM, I think the only condition I take this job in is if I do the Joe Douglas approach, where I go to John Mara and say, I need 6 years or I'm not taking this job. I want a 6-year contract.
There is no way you could take this job without any sort of security.
Yeah.
In a sense of, I want 6 years.
Yeah. Because
by then you could hopefully, maybe you deal with Joe Judge for one more season, but then you could bring your guy in. But again, if I'm a new general manager, to be told that I don't have control over who's coaching the team, I don't know. That's a red flag. That's probably an organization that I don't want to be at. Yeah,
I don't want to be there either. And we're going to sure be talking more about the Giants going forward here. I want to go into some of the other stuff that's flowing around here. The Black Monday stuff. Joe Judge somehow has his job, but I said cleaned house in Chicago, cleaned house in Minnesota. Brian Flores surprisingly out in Miami. I think that's the biggest shock of the three as far as the Dolphins let Flores go.
Yeah, I mean, that's an easy one. I think letting Flores go was the biggest shock out of all of the Black Monday news. I thought Brian Flores did a solid job in Miami. Definitely didn't warrant getting canned. I think there it may be kind of a scenario where Brian Flores wanted or saw something one way and the organization and the team want something else. And that's the only conceivable thing that I could, or the logical thing that I could think of that resulted in Brian Flores getting fired, because I don't think he should have been. I mean, his record was solid. He went head to head with Bill Belichick and performed extremely well. I mean, he came back this season when the season was pretty much dead and had them fighting all the way till the end. I don't. It's confusing as to why this happened, and I just think there's something behind the scenes that we may not be privy of.
Yeah, there had to be some sort of friction with him and Chris Greer, and the fact that Stephen Ross picked Greer, who whiffed on all those draft picks and all those free and signs, that he got the job, just tells you that organization is rotten too.
Yeah. I mean, that's another place where, like, buyer beware if you end up there.
Yeah. I mean, I heard rumors right now that Jim Caldwell's on the list there, and again, like, that's the long term. Like, I'm not making much a long term play there. He's 67 years old.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Jim Caldwell is going to do better than Brian Flores right now. And quite frankly, I don't think any assistant or any former coach that may be in the conversation is going to go to Miami and be better than Flores. So whoever gets Flores, though, is getting a great coach. So whatever organization he lands on, man, you might have hit the jackpot there.
Yeah, it's a bad sign to me, and I forget who says on Twitter. I think it was one of the Barstool guys that was correct about this. Like, if you fire your coach, he becomes the top candidate in the market. Maybe you shouldn't have fired your coach.
Oh, without a doubt.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. And, it's actually it's pretty crazy, because heading into Monday, right, on Fox's NFL pregame show, they have Jay Glazer on, and he was talking about, who's safe and who's out. And number one on his safe list was Brian Flores.
Yeah.
I mean, and he automatically becomes the hottest candidate on the market, in my opinion. And if that's the case, there's an issue there. I think you messed up, Miami.
Yeah, also about that second thing at Jay Glazer, I do give him credit too, because he said, like, that he'd been told, like, hey, keep an eye on the Flores thing. It's like, he heard rumbling that something was not right there. So Glazer, again, well connected.
I mean, of course, one of the best in the industry.
Yeah. He absolutely is. And I want to get some of the interesting Week 18 games. The NFC stuff, I think, was pretty easy. I mean, you're already investing that as the Packer guy, considering these are guys they might be playing in the playoffs here. And I think the NFC drama with the Ram 49er game sort of being the highlight of the day there. I thought that was definitely a fun game. And credit to the Niners, too, where they look dead and buried in that game. They're down 17 points in the second half. And then Jimmy Garoppolo leads them back. They had the big stand in overtime. Great job by them. Yeah,
that was an incredible game. I mean, going into Sunday, really looking at both the AFC and NFC, there's way more on the line for the AFC in